This lake can really change its personality in a hurry, like a woman, all smiles one minute and dancing a temper tantrum the next. Tomorrow is Sunday. I will go someplace.
We got a little bit of a sunset. That's the Porcupine Mountains right there. And the ever-changing Lake Superior. Okay guys, so I'm out here on a walk in about the coldest day of the year so far, or I should say the coldest day of the winter. It's going to be -6 tonight with a wind chill. Right now in the middle of the day, excuse me, it's probably maybe about 0, I guess. And it's snowing. So, yeah, we got a week or two here of what people would call, around here anyways, real winter. And I'm walking to the store just to get some exercise, get the blood flowing, get a couple things. It's probably like 2 miles, 4-mile round trip, not a big deal. And I'm going to try to say a few things here if I can collect my thoughts. If I stumble with my words, it is cold out here, and sometimes it's hard to make your mouth work properly. If you've never been in this kind of weather before, for all you like Southerners and Californians and Texans and Floridians and Georgians and such. But, okay, so here's some thoughts. what I'm trying to do with this video and this talk is to give a perspective of what it is truly like to live in a place with a lot of winter, from the perspective of a person that wasn't raised in it. You know, it's not your natural environment. People that were born, you know, in the Midwest, in the cold places, and, you know, it's like, in a way it's the standard, and that's what you got used to, you know, from a baby onwards, and so it's not you know, it's just a different approach to it. But, you know, for myself, and possibly for others, in the future, you know, I had a, you know, some would say, like, the place I grew up was ideal. I mean, we had truly 4 seasons, and, you know, the winters were really never that extreme. The summers could get hot, but it really wasn't, you know, it didn't feel like a big deal. But, you know, Northern California area, up in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas, you know, I've covered that already. But I mention that to make a point of, like, when I did what I've called a reverse migration, you know, because a lot of Midwesterners, especially back in the day, I mean, things are certainly changing, and they're changing fast. But, you know, back in the day, 80s, 90s, early 2000s and such, you know, most people gravitated towards the coasts, and there's always been this kind of American, you know, heading westward type of prevailing migration, you know, but that, you know, that's, well, I won't go into that, but you know, I left. I mean, I wanted, you know, I'm trying not to cover things I've already mentioned. I'll put a video to a link to a video from about a year ago where I try to talk about some of these things. Man, it's so cold out here, and I'm going right into the wind. Whew. I might take a different route. So, okay, back on track here. First thing I'll do is I will say that if you decide to move to a place with a lot of winter, you know, I just keep saying it like that because it could mean a lot of places, you know. I mean, I live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but, you know, the Upper Midwest, New England, you know, Alaska, you know, if you're an American, you know. First thing is just don't panic. It can be shocking for a while. I mean, you just, you know, because you've just never experienced that much cold, you know, and you just, you know, I remember when I first came to the Midwest, it was in Wisconsin back in the 90s, and I lived, you know, for a couple winters with a girlfriend I had back then, and I was like, I can't believe people live here. Like, I mean, I was like, I can't believe people aren't just freezing to death. They just don't find, like, you know, whole towns frozen to death. I mean, it was that kind of shocking. But the truth is, if you have the right gear, oop, let this guy by here. If you have the right gear, you can survive anything. I mean, it's just the truth. You know, people climb Mount Everest. So having the right gear, having the right boots, of course, this is all very elementary stuff, and you'll find survivalist channels that do this stuff, you know, 100 times better than what I'm saying to you. But again, I'm trying to give you just a real layman's perspective. I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I don't push limits like that. I'm kind of a slow-paced, look around adventure type of guy. I like to cruise at 7 miles an hour, and I like to paddle on open water, and I don't shoot rapids, and I don't climb mountains really unless there's a reason. You never find me running unless something's chasing me. So. Especially in my middle age. So yes, what I'm trying to say is get a good pair of boots, get a good snowsuit, get some warm clothes. There's an acronym for, you know, anything but cotton, and it's kind of true. Once cotton gets wet, it actually is more dangerous than not wearing anything at all. So try to stay away from cotton. You know, a good hat. And for the most part, you're fine. You know, have a good plan for when it gets cold, staying inside. One thing that's really worked for me Now, I'm also trying to give it from a perspective of someone that doesn't have a lot of money. Okay, because at the end of the day, it's just true. Like, if you got money, you can just throw money at anything. It's still the case. But I don't have a lot of money. I never will. And so you have to figure out a way, you know, to deal with the elements. One of the best ways I've found is, if you have to heat a space, make it the smallest space you can. That's why I think like the tiny house movement and living in a schoolie and living in a camper and things like that is actually a really great trend. And it makes a lot of sense. Because it's just not a lot of space to heat. It keeps things simple. I have an ice castle, as you guys know, and it already is kind of built for cold weather because it's meant to drag out on frozen lakes and fish out of. And so it's really easy for me to, like, you know, I just turn the heater on once in a while. I mean, even like in this kind of weather, I just click the thermostat, you know, once an hour or so, kind of bring the temperature up. If I go shovel outside for 5 or 10 minutes, I don't even have to do that. So it's, you know, it's really easy, it's cheap. I should pay attention to how much propane I burned in a winter, but it's not much more than a couple $100. And it could be even cheaper. Eventually I'm going to put in a diesel heater, which I've got, and maybe a wood stove, and I've got lots of other plans. I mean, I might even go get rid of the ice castle altogether. You know, things I'll share with you in the future, but yeah, a small space to heat and to hang out in is awesome. And you don't even have to be a single guy. I mean, a couple can do it. Obviously, there's lots of tiny house channels and van life channels and such, you know, on YouTube here that prove that. Just figuring out which way I'm going here. I'm going down towards the lake, and it's probably gonna get colder. So, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, what else can I talk about here? Localization. I've been thinking about this, again, you know, more seriously in the past year or so. You might notice I'm trying to kind of stay away from the hot button topics, you know, that for one thing, will get you kind of shadow banned or completely deleted off of YouTube. We all know what they are at this point. Basically, the thing that's been happening now for about a year and a half, and no sign of stopping. So I'm not going to talk about these things directly, but everything I'm saying kind of, you know, applies to that. Localization. Now, I'm a big wanderer. I always have been. And when I look back on my life, I'm realizing that in a way my world is shrinking. And all of our worlds are, you know, all of our, how do you say this? The world is shrinking for all of us. Because, well, let's just say it's going to get harder to travel. It's going to be harder to get on a plane. It's going to get more expensive. And there's going to be a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of things that you got to do to yourself before they'll give you permission to travel. And that's going to be more than just planes. It's going to be ferries. It's going to be buses. It's going to be public transportation. And eventually it might become just climbing in your car, or climbing on your scooter, or climbing in your boat. I remember a couple years ago when I was on my shanty boat trip, I kept thinking, you know, as I went through the locks, and if any of you guys have watched that series, thank you for one, starters. But also you might remember there was one where I kind of tried to bring this up. I didn't do a very good job, and I got a little pushback on it because I didn't really articulate myself well enough. But what I was trying to say is, I was going through a lock and I was thinking, this is amazing that they do this just for little old me. And, you know, you can go through there on a canoe. You can go through there on a kayak. You could probably go through there on a floating inner tube, and they're going to open up that big, massive contraction, and they're going to start those pumps, and they're going to raise or lower the water level so you can get through the lock and dam. And that, to me, was such a mind blower And I felt so, you know, lucky, so blessed. Once or twice, you know, they're like, oh, let's wait for a barge to come through and you can kind of piggyback in on them. And I was like, no problem. I'll sit here all day if you need to stack them up just to kind of make this worth it. But, you know, for the most part, yeah, just they saw me coming. They opened the thing up. And I was like, oh, wow. It's like, but I also couldn't help to think that those days are numbered. And it's eventually there's going to be a justification, whether correct or not, to shut that down. Stuff like that. And they might even tie a lot of these travel restrictions to even things like that. So, you know, in my ever constant trying to adapt to the world, like all of us do and should, I think, well, I'll just live on the waterways of America. That means I can continue to kind of move around and enjoy myself and change the scenery and follow the seasons and follow the weather. And I'll just live on a boat and go up and down the riverways and do the Great Loop over and over again if I ever, you know, if I can afford it. And, well, I have a feeling in the not too distant future, and I guess we'll just look back on this video and see if I made a proper prediction. But they're going to say you have to get certain things in order to just pass through a lock and dam, even though you're hundreds of feet away from the only person there in a room, you know, up 2 stories high, pushing buttons. You know, I guess you're putting them in danger, and you're in danger, and who knows. Bare minimum, you might have to wear something just to get through a lock and dam. And I mean, I guess I would probably do that if I had to, if that was what got me through the lock and dam. But my point is, if this isn't showing people yet that this is not your average change, you know, of course, the more the things change, the more they stay the same. That's an old saying. Yeah, very true. But this is something totally different. This is a level that I would argue we've never seen. I mean, of course, if you lived, you know, when World War II was building up or something, you might be saying the exact same thing. But I would say this is even unprecedented to that. And if this all gets through, which at this point, there's no political solutions, and there's nobody really to push back at this point. It's kind of a foolproof plan. It's a lockstep plan. Then the future within our lifetimes is going to be so drastically different than what we're used to. And there's a point where the most adaptable people cannot adapt. And then there's just people that kind of see it for what it is, and they're not going to I don't know, reconcile with it. I'm going to be one of them. You know, everyone has their limits. And so I've said this before, and I will just say it again and remind everybody. If you have, you know, retirement plans, adventure plans, you know, kind of bucket list things that you want to do that involve, you know, travel. I'll get back around to the localization thing here in a minute, but then I would say now it's long overdue. I mean, like, it's the time to do it was like last year, and I don't mean to like put pressure and anxiety on people, but it's really just the truth. Things are changing really quick, and travel and tourism, you know, and movement, freedom to move around, freedom to roam, is slipping away by the day. And the things that they're going to tie to it are going to be, you're going to have to make a choice. So, localization, this is what I mean, this is why I brought that up. For myself, what I've decided, well, for one thing, is I look back on my life, my 48 years, and there's been about, you know, 25 of those years where, for the most part, I had a lot of adventures. Now, of course, I wish I would have done them better, maybe even more of them. And a lot of them, you know, definitely, you know, I even though I was doing, well, I'll get to that. You know, I'll do story time with Backroads of Brenton, you know, in the future here and cover some of those bases. But, you know, in a nutshell, I got to travel, you know, I made it happen. And I've been a lot of places. I've been all over the world. You know, I've been to New Zealand, I've been to Australia, I've been to Eastern Europe, I've been to Western Europe, I've been to Iceland, I've been, well, you know, Canada, Newfoundland, stuff like that, all over this country. And, you know, I feel like the world is shrinking because of these travel restrictions that are going to come, these artificial travel restrictions that have nothing to do with, you know, so has to do with the reaction to that was manufactured, might be a way to put it. So I've surrendered to localizing my life. Up here in the UP is my choice, for a lot of reasons. And in the summer, it's, you know, this whole big lake in our backyard here, which could really be endless kind of explorations if you want to get down to it. There's just so many places to see and so many things to do. Even though half of it belongs to Canada, and Canada is becoming, you know, already really is one of the hardest borders in the world to cross if, you know, they don't like the look of you. I have a story for that sometime. So, but even that, you know, I've said to people, if my world becomes, you know, this 300-mile-long peninsula at the top of Wisconsin, I will find satisfaction in that. Will I have some laments about not being able to go farther than that? Yeah, absolutely. But I did see a lot of the world before I carry on to the next one, and I'm very thankful for that. It was an instinct. I've always had this instinct that, like, things are going to get harder and more restrictive, not the other way around. And so I would, you know, respectfully recommend to anybody that is thinking about these things that, you know, it's kind of like musical chairs, and the time is coming. It's already come. It's that last year was the right time to do it type thing. But the time is coming. I'm going to blow my nose here. Sorry about that, guys. It is cold out here. You, like musical chairs, you want to find your chair and you want to sit in it before the music stops and be in the place that you want to be, because man, I don't want to say a lot of these keywords, but there is, you know, something great and something like a reset. Put those two together. It's happening right now. And when the music stops, it's very possible that where you live, the past is going to become the future. 100 years ago, look the statistic up. Most people never went more than 100 miles from their house. So, you know, kind of think of it that way. If you live in a place where a 100-mile radius, you could, you know, find satisfaction in looking around and doing the things you like to do, whether it be like fishing or boating or motorcycling or, you know, climbing trees or hiking. Who knows what it is? Then you could continue to live a pretty good life, and that's kind of how I'm thinking. I'm localizing, so change hands here. Okay, guys, I had to start it there. Got a phone call for a second. My camera is my phone is my camera. So, but yeah, okay. So I think what I was talking about is, you know, cities and how, you know, they have this timeless pull to them, especially when you're young, because they're, you know, exciting. But man, I'm telling you, I think the price to pay for that so-called excitement is going to be too high. It already is. And I think that the way of the future is to move back to the small towns, and that is going against the grain. It's zigging when the system wants you to zag. But small towns are going to be where a person's going to buy some time to survive and possibly ride this whole mess out that's coming, that's already starting. Though there is going to be pressures put on everybody, but you know, rural areas, they're going to probably raise taxes exorbitantly, you know, trying to force you to sell or move, and they're going to put a lot of restrictions on hunting and fishing, and you know, I predict they're going to raise fishing licenses and hunting licenses to, like, yeah, they always play this game with us where we're not saying you can't fish, you just got to buy a license. And, you know, that license is $1,000 a season now. You know, we don't make the prices, that's just the way it is. We got to keep the fish stocks up, or whatever, you know, BS they'll come up with, their justifications. One of my many euphemisms for government is it's just one big justification machine. It just sits back and figures out how to justify what it's going to do to you and enslave you. That's all it is. Another euphemism is it's just a bunch of people that figure out what you want and value and then insert itself in between you and it to profit. That's all it is. So, anyways, hopefully this, again, was another useful, you know, walking and talking video. Walking and talking in a winter wonderland. I'll figure out whether, you know, I put this on Backwaters and Back Roads or put this on Upaloper, or maybe split it up a little bit, you know. But, yeah, guys, as always, thank you so much for your time. Time is precious. And there is a billion things I just read. I've been doing some more research on YouTube here, you know, trying to figure out how to, like, you know, make my channel a little bigger, but it doesn't need to get too big. But, you know, like 1/3 of the planet's on YouTube. It's amazing. And Facebook and all that too. I stay away from most of those, but yeah, there's obviously a lot to pay attention to here on YouTube, and so a fact that a few hundred or sometimes 1,000 and sometimes even a couple thousand people come across and give me their time amazes me. I will never take it for granted, and I will always appreciate it. And I feel lucky because I live a very isolated life in a lot of ways. It's by choice, you know. And I've got friends in my real life here, you know, in my immediate surroundings, and I appreciate them more and more all the time. But also, I feel very blessed and lucky that I get to talk to people like this and get to hear from you guys in the comments and reply back and forth as much as possible. And so I love that too. Please continue to do so. Okay, guys, signing off for now. I'll see you guys soon.
I woke up this morning surprised to see 4 inches of snow on the ground. Looks like I finished my fireplace just in time. It's a frosty morning at 23 degrees, 35 degrees in my cooler box, and the lake water at 42 degrees. But the pressure is off. The fireplace is built, and what little there is yet to do can be done regardless of the weather.